The Employee Retention Credit from the IRS is the last major COVID relief program. Claim up to $26,000 for each employee you had on payroll. This is Marty Stewart with Disaster Loan Advisors. The IRS tax refund is newfound money for your business. Let us help you navigate the ERC program with flexible options and working together. You can relax and have peace of mind that you're in good hands. Stay safe, stay compliant, and keep more of your refund. Take the next step and schedule a free ERC consultation call with us today. What are the ways for claiming the Employee Retention Credit retroactively? Businesses still have time to claim the Employee Retention Credit, ERC, on their 2021 tax returns, even though the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act retroactively ended the ERC at the end of November 2021. As a result of the latest infrastructure bill, the credit is now limited to the third quarter of 2021, so any wages paid after September 30th, 2021 will not qualify for the credit. Employers may claim Employee Retention Credit retroactively for certain qualifying employees. In addition, the IRS has created specific rules under which an employer may claim retention credit. What is the Employee Retention Credit? As part of the ERC program, users are entitled to tax credits of up to $5,000 per employee during the first 3 quarters of 2021 and from March 13th to December 31st, 2020. In the beginning, companies were eligible to use the Employee Retention Credit if their activities had been completely stopped during any calendar quarter of 2020 due to government orders prohibiting travel, trade, or group gatherings. Gross receipts for the calendar quarter decreased significantly due to COVID-19. A 50% decline in 2020 calendar gross receipts compared with 2019 was a significant decline. Employers with a large fall in revenue may still be eligible for this credit up to the end of the calendar quarter, during which gross receipts exceed 80% of their previous calendar quarter's gross receipts. Any recovery startup business with full-time employees can benefit from this program. Qualified wages. Any salary or costs paid to employees throughout the quarter qualify as qualifying wages. Even if the employee received no additional compensation from the company, it also covers eligible health plan fees paid to such workers. Employers must report the total qualified earnings and the associated COVID-19 ERC on Form 941 for the quarter in which the qualifying wages were paid. In the second quarter of Form 941, percent of wages earned between March 13, 2020 and March 31, 2020 that qualified for the ERC were recorded. The employer's quarterly federal tax return will determine the credit for employers from the quarter ending June 30, 2020. The credit was granted against the employer's part of Social Security taxes, 6.20% rate, and railroad retirement tax on all earnings paid to all workers for the period. It should be noted that some changes were made to the ERC rules in 2021. If the credit amount was more significant than the employer's share of those federal employment taxes, the excess was considered an overpayment and was refunded to the employer. A qualified employer might deduct the projected credit amount for the quarter from their employment tax contributions throughout the quarter. The employer may keep the federal income tax withheld from employees and the employees' and employers' portions of the Social Security and Medicare taxes concerning each employee. The employer might submit Form 7200, Advance Payment of Employer Credits Due to COVID-19, to claim additional payment of the excess credit if the payroll tax payments were insufficient to satisfy the expected credit amount. Claiming the Employee Retention Credit retroactively. If you were eligible for the payroll tax credit during the previous quarter but cannot claim it, you may use an amended Form 941X to apply for the ERC. Unlike many other tax credits for small businesses, the ERC does not lower income taxes. The credit is instead provided to employers by reducing their Social Security taxes. Any salaries earned after September 30, 2021 are not eligible for the credit due to the credit's current limitation to the third quarter of 2021. As a result, companies had the time to grab the Employee Retention Credit on their 2021 tax returns, despite the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act retroactively ending the credit in November 2021. The ERC was established in March 2020 by the Coronavirus Aid, Relief, and Economic Security Act, CARES, to provide financial relief with qualified health expenses to companies whose activities were disrupted by the pandemic. Subsequent legislation has revised, expanded, limited, and recently dissolved the ERC. There were 2 ways for taxpayers to apply for the credit. First, you can claim the Employee Retention Credit on Form 941X, Employer's Quarterly Federal Tax Return, to receive a refund of previously paid tax deposits. After subtracting the employment tax contributions, calculate the amount of their anticipated credit. For payroll tax installments that exceed the anticipated credit, taxpayers may submit Form 7-200 to obtain an advance payment. How to apply for the Employee Retention Credit retroactively. This credit is available to companies and tax-exempt organizations operating in any quarter of 2020 or 2021. But they had to have orders by the government restricting trade, travel, or group gatherings due to COVID-19, or completely or partially shutting down business operations for any calendar quarter in 2020 or 2021. The companies that have experienced a substantial decline in revenue during a calendar quarter in 2020 or 2021. Self-employed people are not eligible for this credit. However, it can provide substantial credit and immediate monetary assistance if you qualify for the ERC while having a recovery startup business. Employee Retention Credit example. Employer X paid $100,000 in qualified salaries and $30,000 in other eligible costs in the second and third quarters of 2020 after receiving a $100,000 PPP loan. Employer X needed to submit a minimum of $60,000 in payroll expenditures to be eligible for forgiveness of the whole PPP debt. Accordingly, Employer X applied for the forgiveness of the entire PPP debt and included $100,000 in qualifying salaries as payroll expenses. The additional $30,000 in allowable costs were not disclosed by Employer X on the application. As a result, Employer X is considered to have excluded $100,000 in eligible salaries from the ERC. That employer recorded $100,000 of qualified wages on the PPP loan forgiveness application, even though Employer X could have reported $30,000 of eligible expenses, other than payroll costs, and $70,000 of payroll costs. As a result, none of the $100,000 in earnings may be considered eligible income under the ERC. Employer X might consider $30,000, $100,000, $70,000 as qualified salaries for ERC purposes if Employer X had reported $70,000 of qualifying wages and $30,000 of other acceptable costs on its PPP debt forgiveness application. Similarly, Employer X might include $50,000, $150,000 minus $100,000 as qualified earnings for ERC benefits if it had paid $150,000 in eligible wages and disclosed that salary on its PPP debt forgiveness application. Suppose an employer lists qualifying salaries as payroll expenses on a PPP debt forgiveness proposal, but the loan balance is not forgiven. In that case, the qualified earnings may subsequently be considered for the ERC. Employee Retention Credit updates. Due to COVID-19, you are eligible for ERC and tax credit for offering paid leave. You cannot claim both credits for the same salary. You cannot factor in paid leave pay when determining the qualifying salaries. The excess credits from the Employer Retention Tax Credit would also be helpful for health care benefits this year. The salaries you pay with a grant are not eligible for ERC. However, you may utilize Restaurant Revitalization Fund money until 2023 to cover costs. After that, you'd probably be able to use a restaurant grant and ERC. PPP loan recipients can claim the Employee Retention Credit. When the CARES Act was enacted, you had to decide between this credit and a PPP loan. As a result, if your debt forgiveness application was successful, you could not use this credit for salaries paid with a PPP loan. However, you can utilize wages received with your PPP loan to make an ERC claim if your request for forgiveness is denied. Is there a deadline to claim the Employee Retention Credit retroactively? ERTC retroactive period deadline was previously January 1, 2022, but was later updated to October 1, 2021. Additionally, there have been changes to qualifications. Conclusion and summary related to claiming the Employee Retention Credit retroactively. If you are eligible for the Employee Retention Credit, it is best to contact a tax professional to help you file for it retroactively. This credit can provide much-needed financial relief for your business. As you can see, navigating the Employee Retention Credit program is very complex and confusing to try to figure it out on your own. Even on the IRS ERC FAQ pages, it says this page is not current. There have been several years of updates and changes to this IRS tax credit already, including 4 congressional acts and 5 updated guidances from the IRS, totaling over 3,900 pages. Who has time to sift through all that information, let alone decipher some of the confusing language and rulings? In order to stay compliant with current IRS ERC rules and regulations, expert specialized help is highly recommended. Even if your business received an SBA PPP loan, you are still eligible for the ERC credit. If you think you may not qualify, it's worth a conversation to see if your business does. Let us assist you with a complete employee retention credit process, or if you might be stuck on filling out the IRS 941X forms correctly on your own. We are here to help. Stay safe, stay compliant, keep more of your refund. Email us at support@disasterloanadvisors.com or call us toll-free at 877-463-9777 extension 3. Or visit us on the web at www.disasterloanadvisors.com/ERC for complete details on the Employee Retention Credit Program for your business.